my colleague, Youth Coordinator Jake Goodman, to offer some of our information about youth programming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just to clarify, my main ask in this part of the section is for approval for an after school or some type of program, or some type of implementation of our reality check program in Greenville School. So now I'm going to talk about it. So together we have a shared goal, and that is tobacco use prevention within the Greenville Central School District. So far, what has been done is academic tobacco education. That is what schools are able to do. That's it for this extent. And y'all are doing a great job. What our program can do is push that envelope further. To change people, you change perceptions. And that's through information education. And that is where the student leadership engagement and peer-led education come in. So that is youth learn best from youth. They also listen to youth the most. So the hope is to implement this via other youth. So what that really looks like is reality check. So this has been a program, as Jen mentioned, for over 25 years. It's completely youth-led, and it's to educate and mobilize young people against big tobacco. So I'm going to talk about 3 separate things. I'm going to talk about the education that students in the reality check program would receive, and I'm going to even show you the curriculum, what that looks like. And then I'm going to share the educational outcomes for youth that are in the reality check program, and then the educational outcomes for the unaffiliated youth, so kids that are not in that program. So the ones who would be receiving that direct education from other youth, and what that looks like. So first, there is the youth-led education. So this is what would be happening with the young people in the reality check program. Like I said, in the next slide, I'm going to show you the curriculum. That's like the thing that we're going to use to like teach and educate and mobilize, engage, have fun, all that good stuff. And then the youth can lead education sessions for their peers. In the past, it's looked like lunch and learns. We did you can see a little picture. We did a big tobacco sack race, because kids want to do a sack race. I said, okay, let's do it. So we did that, park cleanups, assemblies, in-classroom education, whatever the youth say that is going to impact the students, get their voices heard, and make a difference. There is guidelines, but it is also youth-led. There also is legislative education. So as Jen was talking about with our policy, we like to mobilize the young people and educate them to educate legislative leaders on tobacco policy, right? So we also have the Legislative Education Day that happens once a year. I gotta take the kids up to Albany, which isn't as exciting when you live in Greenville. It's only like half hour, 40 minutes. But they meet with their senators, assembly members, and give some of the information that they just learned back to their leaders. I kept on talking about the curriculum, let's look at it. So this is, I don't know if I click this, no, just go to the next slide. If anyone wants to have the physical copy, there is, or a digital copy rather, you can scan the QR code, you'll get the curriculum, it shows you the whole thing. It's also on this other side, I can't click through each thing. However, there is General Tobacco 101. We like to hit it from the perspective of the retail marketing to young people, and then the environment. That's really what gets young people motivated and engaged. There's some Leadership 101, methods of engagement, how to talk to leaders, and this is all through presentations. Sometimes we do games, we have Kahoots in there. I bring pizza often. This is engaging and fun stuff that the kids really like to be a part of. These are the educational outcomes. I'm not going to read through every one, but the reality check youth are able to hone in on those leadership skills. There are youth that are engaged, there are youth that care, and they're able to fine-tune those skills in this environment. It looks great on their resume. They are building civic engagement skills, and they can get volunteer hours, they can get, depending on the conversations with the health teachers, they can get health class credit, yeah. So there is that outcome there for non-affiliated youth. So for students that are not in the reality check program, there is empowerment. I'm going to tell a story now. I'm getting excited. So I was working with a student down in Kentucky, Athens. We were doing like an alternative to suspension kind of deal. And he was saying, I know vaping sucks. Like, I know it's not good for my body. I know it's not good for my community, but like, I can't make any, like, I just feel so hopeless because I can't make any change. And I said, what if there was a program where the point of it was for you to see change in your community? If you could see actual change being set forth, coming from your school, coming from youth, coming from your friends, coming from someone in your gym class, and he was telling me that like that's what you need. That's what will get me energized and engaged, is seeing the actual change made by, it could be made by me, but it could also be made by my peers, and that's the thing that excites me. I want to talk about the video. I have a little video. These are voices from Greenville. This was just under a year ago. I hope the volume works. I also, no? Can someone, like, yeah, I can also get up and click it? Yeah.
I feel that it's like not acceptable in our school, and like there's too much of it happening, and like it's like even when you're in the hallway, you can like smell it,
Nice. Okay.
I feel that it's like not acceptable in our school, and like there's too much of it happening, and like and even when you're in the hallway, you can like smell it, and it like kind of hurts something.
in Greenville is that there was multiple kids, like teenagers and even 10-year-olds, 11, all these kids getting vapes and tobacco from other kids that are in high school. Even like 17, 16-year-old kids are getting it, and we don't know where they're getting it from, like the other high school kids, but that's definitely a problem.
I think they should have more restrictions in tobacco, like where they sell it and stuff like that. They should have more like restrictions on that. Like you have to be like a certain age and have an actual identity. They should actually go through a better process for that.
I think we'll get there. Like put posters around school and stuff like, don't use tobacco.
I feel like in stores, like, you know, like Dollar General, they also have like the tobacco sign and the record shop, but they should have like a sign like, just like a warning before use, so you know like what happens to you.
They should also sell that.
Yeah.
A couple wall.
And like, I don't understand why they even like created like cigarette campaigns, because that's plain and stupid. Who never heard that in a game? Come on.
The kids are pumped up. They are engaged, they do care. And my hope is to bring that energy, bring that engagement to the kids and get them to make some, to learn about real change. So I want to like, again, close off the ask. We hope to like implement this program in the Greenville Central School District, high school, middle school, and we look forward to working with y'all. This is our resource page. I think now I'm gonna pass it over to Laura.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm just going to talk very briefly because I think you wanted to know about the Juuling settlement money. So the New York State Attorney General sued the Juuling settlement. The company went after teens, right? And they could prove that this was a target population. So each county in New York State has received an amount of money over time. Ours is like $290,000 for Greene County. Columbia County's received the same, and then your BOCES has received money. So your BOCES is working with the schools to try to get the money to the schools. We are essentially creating a local law, and we're kind of working on that in Greene County. The thing I'm most excited about right now is that we had surveyed, we did focus groups and listening sessions with providers in the community. And what we heard from them is that there's no evidence-based treatment to get kids to stop. We know this is an addiction, right? These kids come to school, and for some of them it's a once or twice thing, but for some of them they're really addicted. And how do you get them to stop? So I'm gonna pass this around, and I'll ask you to share this with your school nurses, your coaches, your medical director, Dr. Jibicki, who I've worked with. It is a two-part series for providers and prescribers, looking at youth nicotine trends, how to screen, assess for it, and then part two is actually evidence-based treatment. So we know like this is gonna take a multi-pronged approach. We don't have all the answers, but we have been working on this. We do have a work group that meets every other month, consisting of both counties. We welcome participation from the schools, and we will continue to support you. So questions, concerns, you can address them to me directly or ask tonight. Thank you for giving us this time.
Thank you all very much. I know it's taken us a few months to get you here, and we appreciate your patience, but I also really, you put together quite a presentation, and thank you to the PTSA for connecting us. There's a lot of information here. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. Can you list the 7 places in Greenville? Because I'm missing at least one, or possibly 2. I have one question mark, but there's one I can't.
I can get you, so I wish I could list them off the top of my head. One of the shops is the shop I mentioned on Route 81, but it is public information and I can send you the list. It comes from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance. And then number 2, you can also find that information through the local health department's website. And we have as a program created visual maps that might make it easier for you to see, which we've shared also with the town board in Greenville.
Okay, I can look it up. I just
Yes, you absolutely can.
don't well name the number and then
It is increased
can't
from,
really think of the 7th person, so
it is increased from, I believe, 4 or 5 to 7 in the last few years, so
yeah.
that is a trend we're seeing.
I'll look them up.
I can send that to Daphne.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got some stuff to discuss and to go over, and we'll go from there. We have new administration at all levels, so it may, we will definitely be back in touch with you. We just need to wrap our heads around the ask and the parameters and so on, and then we can have another conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you,
please
guys.
feel free to follow up with any questions.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move us on to our next presentation, end of the year data report, our BSIP and DSIP draft share from the administration team.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing?
And how are you?
Okay. So happy to be here tonight with you, and happy to introduce the rest of the admin team here as we are ready to present our 25-26 end of year report presentation to the Board of Ed. Tonight, we want to provide an update on the continuous school improvement work that's taken place over the 25-26 school year. And tonight's format will be the same generally as what we typically do this time of the year. So for those of you who've been here before, you may recognize some of this format. For those of you who this is new, just know that this is kind of an annual tradition that we do this time of the year. And the format generally looks like this. We will go through and we'll provide highlights from each of the 3 district goal areas. And then we're going to review some data points along the way that are going to kind of feed into or provide some insight into how those things impacted student learning and the learning environment. Towards the end of our presentation, we'll shift our glance toward the 26-27 school year. And we will present the goals and strategies that we'll be working on in the year to come that will move us closer to our mission and vision. Within the presentation, please feel free to ask questions. We can answer questions along the way, but we'll also have some time at the end. I'd like to thank Daphne for providing you all with some hard copies of some data profiles and some materials. I just want to walk you through the things that you have in front of you, and then also what's been linked in your most recent board update. We have updated building profiles for the end of the 25-26 school year, evidence of completion documents for our district improvement plan and the individual building plans. So all of these include much more data than we'll be presenting tonight, and please feel free to review those for further information, and then you can contact administration if you have questions about those things that we don't necessarily touch on tonight. But just to, the information that you have in your hand, that has all been seen by our building leaders, our building leadership teams, and we've worked with it this summer to create the 26-27 DSIP. So let's take a look at where we are in our Board of Ed adopted calendar for school improvement. A reminder that in the past, this presentation was actually done in July or right at the end of June, depending on how the calendar fell. So a few years ago, we did move this into August. But so here we are in August, reflecting on the 25-26 school year, and then looking forward into reflecting on the 25-26 school year, and then looking forward into the 26-27 school year. One thing that's important to note about all of this is that it's about cycles, right? School improvement. It's about being intentional about our timing of when we do things, what we look at, having cycles and systems and processes. And we hope, on top of presenting information to you and on top of talking about the things that we did to try to make improvements to our learning environment and to our student outcomes, we hope you also get insight into we have systems for improvement here in Greenville, and we have things that we watch regularly, and we take action based on those metrics and those numbers and information that we get. Just a quick look back at last year's goals, the 25-26 goals. Goal 1, curriculum. Really, the two strategies to help support that curriculum goal centered around English language arts instruction at the elementary school and the initial implementation of the Bookworms program, and then K-12, making a change in how we were using our collaborative time to kind of break outside of some boxes to support more collaboration for vertical and horizontal curriculum alignment. We knew that good things happen when we get our teachers together in rooms and give them times to focus on things, and we wanted to be very intentional about what we were doing and when we were doing it, and trying to give more times for our teachers to do that. Goal 2, as a reminder, was, that's our culture goal, and our strategy for improving in that area was to focus on student wellness. So tonight's presentation is connected to, they mentioned some of the work that we've done there with Twin Counties and connecting the work in Twin Counties to our MTSS system. And on top of just doing work in terms of supporting students who needed maybe counseling for substance abuse or vaping, was also about prevention. And last, goal 3, community. We were, as we often do, this goal boils down to communication, and we were looking at increasing engagement with our families and getting better at communicating with them specifically from teacher to student about student progress. So I'd like to move into goal 1, curriculum highlights. And like I just said, goal 1 really focused on strengthening curriculum coherence, creating more consistent learning experiences across our district. At the elementary school level, we continued the implementation of really great reading, and then also fully rolled out the implementation of the Bookworms ELA program. This included refining schedules, pacing, intervention supports, and a lot of professional learning and collaboration time for teachers. At the secondary level, we did work around identifying some priority standards, trying to find gaps and redundancies across grade levels and courses. We supported this work through our collaborative faculty time, through end-of-the-year surveys with teachers, We got feedback that people were working in making improvements in the areas of writing, fields of science, emphasizing the skills that students need, additional ELA work around bookworms. And then on top of those kind of academic standards, we looked at some of these other kind of soft skills, if you will, these social emotional learning things like self-regulation, or learning skills like organization, independence. On top of that, also looking at the instructional strategy of engaging students a little bit more by giving them choice in their learning and how they demonstrate their learning, particularly at the middle school and high school levels. We supported all those things that we're working on from a curriculum standpoint through additional protected collaboration time, job embedded coaching through our district coaches, as well as Questar support services, release time, and additional specialists who we contracted with from our pool of professionals that we work with at Greenville.
Matt, a quick question. What is DI, hybrid DI? What does that mean?
Hybrid DI, so the differentiated instruction block is a portion of bookworms. Bookworms is separated English language arts block, shared reading block, and the differentiated instruction block. Well, we had differentiated instruction happening here at Greenville, and oftentimes it was, for ELA, differentiated instruction was happening when our reading interventionists were in the room, right? So bookworms called for it in one way, really great reading. Our phonics program kind of called for it in another. So what we did is really come through together and look at what does this need to look like with the model and the time that we have and the people that we have and the resources that we have, because we wanted to keep the RGR, the really great reading, as our core phonics program, especially for our primary students. And so we had to kind of take a look at that DI block and restructure it a little bit from how it had looked before. And it was really dynamic change for us. It's data-based, it's based on how the kids are doing and forming different groups and who's working with who now and how many times a week am I going to work with this kid, how many times a week are you working with this kid. And it's a really good practice. It's one of the great things that we're doing. It's one of the great ways that we've evolved. Yeah. One of the great things about this presentation is that we do it over the summer, and we get to look at the secondary plans of our recent graduates. Very big thanks to Sierra. We revamped Sierra Pizzola, our communication specialist. We revamped our kind of data gathering system for post-secondary plans. And that involves Sierra like chasing down every single one of our seniors and getting a decision from them. So because of that, we have some information here to look at. We also have information on the slide going back from the class of 2025 and back to the class of 2024. Prior to Sierra going around and chasing every student around individually, our counselors used to do it too, and as well as Deb Sanchez and everybody who worked in the counseling office as well with Ms. Brown. But for the class of 2026, about 69% of graduates plan to attend either a 2-year or 4-year college. It's down slightly from 71% last year and 76% 2 years ago. At the same time, the percentage entering the workforce has increased to 30%, while there's a small number of graduates who plan to enter the military. And we remember that these results reflect the wide range of post-secondary goals of our students, and that they are individuals, they make choices. We always like to present our data in context here in Greenville, right? So we pull national comparison data from the National Student Clearinghouse, and they don't release data annually, but I did this year get an updated data. I think for the last 2 years we've been looking at data from, 2022. We now have data from 2024 as a recent benchmark. So with that in mind, 69% of Greenville's graduating class plans to attend college, like I said on the last slide, compared with 53% of students nationally in rural schools and 60% across all schools. Greenville is also above both national comparisons for 4-year and 2-year college plans. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Melissa, and she's going to talk a little bit about iReady, one of our screening systems here in the district.
Melissa, just before Matt, I had a question. I have no idea how we get at it. It's more of an anecdotal observation. While the number or the percentage of students that go on to whether it's a 2-year or 4-year college, there's a perception that the dropout rate is higher than we would want it to be. And there was some speculation of, are our students prepared for college? So I'm just going to put that out there as something that has been a conversation. I don't know how we get at it for that, because we are trending above national, even if you look at the 24 numbers. In fact, we trend even higher, looking at the 2024 Greenville numbers to the national. But it just begs that question, you know.
Yeah, you're asking about post-secondary college persistence rates, which is available. It does lag, right? So you don't get it right away, but I can certainly look into that.
Okay, so we're going to dive into some iReady data. And like Matt shared before, iReady is one of the tools that we use. It's a screener, and our students take it at the beginning of the year, middle, and end of the year. And this is for grades 1 through 8. Our first graders only take it at the end of the year, and that gives us an additional data point to use when we're looking at intervention going forward, starting in the fall for our students. So the graph that we're looking at here, if you look at the 3 bars on the left-hand side, this is showing the national norms and the New York State norms. And iReady breaks this into 5 different levels. So if you look at the key on the right, the red shows 2 or 3 levels or more, levels below standards. The yellow is 1 grade level below, and then our greens are early on to mid and above grade level. So in comparison to New York State and national scores, if you look at our 2 or 3 levels below, our students are performing better than the state and national there. We really like to see that most of our students are in those greens, but we also like to look at the yellow to say, okay, there's growth for those students, right? Because the 1 grade level or below, we often look at that as our students who are performing in level 2 for our state exams, and if we can work with those groups of students to move them into that green area, then we'll be in a good place. This next graph shows a comparison of September to June. So on the right side, that's our faded side there. This is putting the students into 3 tiered areas. So in the fall, we can see that overall, district-wide, that's what we're looking at when we see the pyramids. We started out at 41% for students in Tier 3, and then at the end of the school year, 26%. Then down below, it breaks it into 2 of our schools. So elementary started at 30% there for high risk, Tier 3, and then moved into 18% for iReady reading. And then our middle school also had movement from 45% high risk to 36%. So if you're looking there, our goal is to really see that red triangle shrink from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and seeing those yellows and greens increase. So this next graph, this is a really nice graph that we like to look at. This is our student growth graph. Regardless of where students fall in the fall, we like to see that they're meeting their growth score. And so this is the median percent progress towards typical growth for our students, and we like it to be at 100% by the end of the school year. So you can see that Ellis, our progress towards annual typical growth is 126%, and our Greenville middle school students are at 100%. And we also provided this slide for you just because over the past couple of years we have been looking at this student growth portion. You can see that student growth from a couple of years ago, 23-24 was at 103, and last year it was at 110, and then this year it's continuing to trend upward at 126. And this is our middle school. So middle school in 23-24, we were at 121. Last year we were at 122, and this year we were right at that 100 mark.
Last year, we started taking a look at the trends, amount of assessment time that it was taking to complete the iReady assessments. Students take these, the elementary schools are taking them 3 times a year. The middle schools are now, they're taking it 2 times a year. We were getting feedback from students and teachers and parents as well that, this was a lot of time and that people weren't sure if that was the best way of using the time. So took that feedback, started paying attention to it. So this spring, the median iReady ELA diagnostic time for Ellis was 48 minutes and 57 minutes at the middle school. At Ellis, that's a decrease down from 54 minutes last year. And also the percentage of students taking more than an hour fell from 43% to 31%. So less time at Ellis this year for individual, on average, and kind of the percentage of students taking an hour or less was less. At the middle school, the median remained relatively stable, but the percentage taking more than an hour actually increased from about 35% to about 42%. Again, just worth monitoring as we consider the value of iReady as a screening tool, and also are always looking at instructional time as a limited and precious resource. We like to take a picture each year of long-term growth in foundational literacy. So what we have here is showing some results from our kindergarten, lowercase letter sounds and phoneme blending subtests for ESGI, as well as the iReady phonics score, that they pull out of the entire iReady assessment. So since 2021, our kindergarten letter sound proficiency has increased from 79% in June of 2021 all the way up to 95% this year. Phoneme blending rose from 67% to 96%. We've also seen substantial gains in grades 1, 2, and 4, and 5. And overall, there's sustained growth here reflecting the impact of consistent phonics instruction and intervention across the elementary school level.
Matt, I have a question for you on that.
Yeah.
Is there anything, with these numbers, they look great when you run down the June 26th, but is there anything to looking at the cohorts? It looks kind of like there's some loss as they move from one level to the next. Is that an area to watch, or is that just because it's a different test?
So what iReady does tell us is that they do say from year to year, percentages are different. You don't really watch the cohorts because they're different standards and different skills. So there's certainly assessments that we do that for because, right? We're watching cohorts kind of through a system, through a lot of different data points and paying attention to demographics of students, number of students identified as students with disabilities, and we understand how all those system numbers work together. But iReady does kind of caution us against doing that just from a percentage proficiency standpoint.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move into iReady Math. And again, this graph shows on the left-hand side there our national norms for each of the 5 levels, as well as New York State and where our district falls. So if you look at the high risk, we have a total of 13%, which are 2 or 3 grade levels above, below. And then we want to see a larger percentage of our students in the early to mid, so that's a total of 49% there, and 37% for the 1 level below. And then this graph, similar to reading, shows that movement that we like to see, where our students in the fall have a greater amount, you know, they're just starting off, they're learning. So we have for Ellis 33% at that high risk tier 3, down to 12% by the end of the year. Our middle school showed good growth there as well, with 30% in the fall up to down to 19%. And then if you look at that top June triangle, you'll see that it's got, that red has gotten smaller. So overall, from Ellis and middle school, that captures how we've gone from 30% down to 14%. Okay, and again, we like to look at that growth. So this year we had 107% growth, which is our typical growth for the median percent progress. And then Greenville Middle School had 92%. And this next graph shows this across time. So over the last couple of years, we, for Ellis, we were in like the 80s, 89%, 85%, and then this year we stretched above that 100% into 107%. Our iReady math in middle school, the last few years, we had 74%, 66%, and then this year we are up to 92%.
So Melissa, if they're not achieving 100%, then in fact they're falling below grade level. Because like a 3rd grader, in order to get to the 4th grade, and to be at the 4th grade where they need to achieve the 100%.
Yes, so our kids in intervention, our students with disabilities, we like to see that they're meeting that their typical growth score, yeah.
No, I think I'm saying the opposite.
So typical growth, no matter where a student starts, iReady has a calculation for where they think that if they make 1 year's progress over the course of a year, right? If that student makes 100% over the course of the year, no matter where they started, they would say that's typical growth, and check that. Now the way they figure this metric up is, you know, this one in particular, this is the middle school. So they hypothetically line up all the middle school students in a line, statistically, right? And you know, starting from student way down here who had 300% typical growth, which happens, all the way down here from a student who had 2% of typical growth, which happens. Who's the median student in that group, right? Okay, the median student in that group, in this case, this year at the middle school, that median student in that group achieved 92% of what iReady said. If you make 1 year's progress, you made 1 year's progress, that would be 100%. The median student made 92% at the middle school this year.
Okay, so in a way you can't really, it's hard to kind of project. I completely agree and see the value of that.
It's different than the grade level proficiency score. Right? And are they at grade level? Are they above grade level? Are they approaching grade level? Are they 2 grade levels below? It's a totally different metric that's meant to see how far are your students moving over the course of a year. Because you can have, you know, where students start and where they end. It's all different amongst other students, right? And that can change your proficiency levels from year to year based on how that falls. But this is showing you how they're moving within the year.
Okay, I guess where I was going is if a student doesn't achieve at least 100%, they will never catch up to grade level. So it's a separate question. This is
Yeah.
not getting at it. It's, I think, a separate question.
So, yeah, what you're saying is if you had a student who was behind in grade level
Correct.
and each year made 80% of typical growth, correct, they would not be catching up.
But even if they make 100% growth, they will never catch up.
Right.
They need to make
They make,
above 100 to even
Right.
stand a chance of catching up.
yes. So like,
Okay.
for the example, when we looked at the elementary school I-ready ELA, and it was, 100, the median student was 126%. That's a signal to us that, okay, we have kids making progress on this past what I-ready would say is 1 year's growth.
Right, because
Yeah.
then we're minimizing the yellow portion of the chart and moving them into the green, which is really our goal.
Or moving them from a dark red to a lighter red, or moving them from a red to a yellow, or,
Right.
wherever they happen to be.
Which kudos to the whole team, because if you look at the reds, they are much smaller than the national norms, so kudos, because that's really great. Okay.
I hope that helps.
I can expand on that a little bit. To go along with what Tracy was talking about, so I get to 100%, and 100% is a year's worth of growth. But if a kid starts out in September and they're 2 years behind, to expand on what Tracy was saying, they would have to have 300% growth in order to catch up to their grade level. If a fictitious grade level, right, as far as this goes. Does I-ready provide a graph that would show us where each of the zones, red, yellow, green, what their growth is? So we can see if a person is making that growth, making that 200% growth, making that 300% growth, so we can see who is moving out of the red into the green or into the yellow.
Yeah, they do. They provide that information on a student-by-student basis, right? So we can go in there and we can see a student with their, what, not only were they, red, yellow, green, but also what percentile were they at, right? Which is data that we use for intervention purposes, right? They come below a certain percentile. And then in addition to that, you can see next to that, what was their percent growth for the year. So we can see, okay, this student is an intervention student. They may still be at the 14th percentile, but they had 150% growth this year, right? So you can see those things, and it's one of the things you can look at as a target of how quickly is the student growing, are they responding to intervention or not?
What I was going to question you on, when you said that, or when your graph said, or your data said that there's 126% growth, I have an issue with that because it's, how do you help them with 100%? I actually expected Eric to bring it up, but I can see how, so that particular piece of data, we want to see way above, if we have a certain number of students that are a year or 2 or 3 behind. So we want to see that number way above 100% moving forward, right? If we're really doing great, we should be, 200%. Not that we're not, we're doing great, but we are seeing progress. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the higher the number goes, the better.
Yeah.
I asked I-ready, I said, what should we, what do you want, what should our target be? Because we do this in our, improvement plans. And they said 100%. That's showing 1 year progress, and that's what we say for 1 year. So we stick to that as a standard, but we'd love to see it above it, and we prefer not to see it below it that much.
Can I ask a question? Kind of along that, I'm going to try to word it right. So you're talking, this thing is showing us the median student, which means out of how many? So at the middle school level, and it may have been there and I just missed it, what was the number of students taking that exam? So that our median student is where in that?
Probably about 240-ish.
Okay, so you're saying, so at that point, 119, 120 students are above the median, and 119-ish students are below that median student. So in the middle, somebody's making that 90%, but there's a whole group that's higher than 90% growth. Is that what it looks like?
Yeah, and then the people that are lower than that too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Dave kind of got my brain going now. Can we get data, or, and I don't need the individuals, but could we see if, when we say the red students, if they're the ones who are getting the 200% growth? Because that would at least mean, from my perspective, that they're catching up.
Sure, we can pull that information for you.
I'm curious, because if it's really focused on getting everybody up to speed, they should have the greatest change. Thank you.
Overall, I mean, especially when you look at that one that's September to June, that's impressive. And I can't thank your team and all of the staff and the teachers working on that enough, because that's really cool to see. As a team, are you pleased with that? Is that trending in the right direction? Is that better than it was last year, that growth from September to June? Do you attribute that to the new ELA curriculum, to the positions that we have in place for coaching?
Well, none of these things happen in a vacuum, right? And you've heard me say before, and if you're new here, you'll probably hear me say this again. When we look at data, we never get too high, we never get too low. We try not to be, as you said, pleased, as any number you look at, you always, by the nature of what we do, we always want that number to be higher, right? So we look at that information as a data point. What can we gain from it? What's it telling us about what we're doing? What's it telling us about what we need to sustain? What's it telling us about what we need to change, adapt, do more of? So it's all, to answer your question, we try not to get too high, we try not to get too low. We look and we ask questions. Is it attributed to this? Is it because of the new intervention or the new reading program? Is it because it's the 5th year of really great reading and maybe we're getting better than that? Is it because Mr. Earth is a really great principal? Is it because of the reading coaches? Is it, is it, there's so many questions. None of it happens in a vacuum. And data begets questions, and questions beget more questions. So I guess I'm not going to come. I'm not able to say any one data point makes us smile or make us think that we've mission accomplished sort of thing. Just while I also try to say that any one data point doesn't get us too far down and make us think that what we're doing is not moving in the right direction. Right? It's all about taking these things, and the next data point is coming along very quickly. Right? When we get one, we look at it and okay, digest it. What's the next one on the pathway to tell us how we're doing? And I have to tell myself that all the time, by the way. So taking a look at iReady assessment again, this time just for math in the spring. Ellis, the median duration was 48 minutes. At the middle school was 65. So compared with last year, Ellis showed a full reduction. The median fell by about 10 minutes, and the percentage of students taking more than an hour decreased from 37% down to 30%. At the middle school, kind of similar with ELA, the median remained essentially unchanged, although the percentage taking more than an hour did decline a little bit from 65% of students to 60%.
So we just talked about data for 1st through 8th grade, but we use some other data for our kindergarten and 1st graders when it comes to number ID, oral counting, quantity discrimination, and missing number. So these are given 3 times throughout the year, and actually we also do progress monitoring with our interventionists for this data as well. But so you'll see up there for kindergarten our number ID and our oral counting. In the fall, our fall number's not up there, but we had 70% in the fall for oral counting. And for our number ID, we had 91% in the fall, and now it's at 96. Down below, for our first graders, we look at a bunch of different measures here. Oral counting went from 77 to 99. Number ID went from 95 to 100%. And quantity discrimination went from 94 to 98%. Missing number went from 91 to, what is up there, 98%. And these are all very quick screeners. They take about a minute each to administer. And we really just like to watch those circles close by the end of the year.
Another metric that we watch closely, we watch this all year long, and we check in on how it's doing to see if it's in line with where we've been, ahead or behind. This is reflex math. This is math fact fluency from the start of the year to the end of the year. I think we're in our 5th year now across grades 2 through 5 doing reflex math. It's a consistent way to build and measure facts fluency across the school. Just a note, grade 3 begins the year with addition and subtraction before shifting to multiplication and division a little bit later in the year, which is why we show both measures for 3rd grade. So this year, the end of the year results are generally consistent with where we've been over the recent years. We had a little bit of an increase with grade 3 multiplication and division, increasing to 63.3%, which is a little bit ahead of last year's results. And grade 5 again finished above 91%. Grade 4 remained strong, 86%, and grade 2 reached 72%. Students, this is important to note, students who have not yet reached mastery on reflex math, when they move up into 6th grade, will continue to use reflex math in grade 6 math class. Mrs. Hamilton. So I'm going to turn this down to Brian now and talk a little bit about middle school and course failures.
So taking a look at this chart here, this is middle school total course failures, and it's kind of why do we look at this data? And from discussions throughout the year, whether it's in team meeting, parent conferences, our RTI meetings, our 5-week progress reports and quarter grades, we take a lot of this data to find out and figure out and discuss where is more support needed for students. So we're kind of always adjusting throughout the school year. Again, really taking a hard look at things every 5 weeks, from the progress reports to quarter grades, but then also during weekly meetings throughout a quarter too. Please remember the course failures up there do include like all our courses we offer in middle school, so it is our 10-week courses like PE and ag and things like that. So those are courses that the students do fail at times, but between grades 6 through 8, there's about 47 courses kids could be in, whether it's math 6, math 7, math 8, and so on. It's also important to note that these are, the large numbers are the course failures, so an individual student could be represented more than once here. From this past school year, if you look at the 25-26 year there, we dropped every quarter of course failures with a significant drop for the 4th quarter, which had spiked high the previous year. When I did take a look at the breakdown of each course, we have like an analytic page on Synergy now, and the work was really great. Thank you, Matt, for getting that in here this year. But there really wasn't a course that stood out, but it is something we will keep looking at with this data, again, to try to find solutions to why our students are struggling at times with some of their courses. With the course failures also did mean that some students were required to come to summer tutoring this year. So we didn't have any in 6th grade, but we had a total of 8 between 7th and 8th grade, with more in 8th grade. But we also recommend students to come to summer tutoring too, but 8 were required. They had a good summer. They just wrapped up last week. So thanks to Melissa for overseeing that. We also had 5 students who didn't earn their credit in world language this year, so it'll be a course that they'll have to take in high school to get that 1 credit to graduate as a senior down the road. 24-25, when we had our summer workshops, we really started to take a look at this a little bit more. And this past, That year, we set some goals looking at our, focused on growth mindset, organizational skills, study skills, as we felt that many of the failures were not due to students lacking academic skills, but more just some of their executive function skills. And so we tweaked that going into the 25-26 school year, and we are still taking a look at that this year, because we still feel by taking a look at some of these failures and just knowing our students and from talking about them throughout the school year, that it isn't necessarily always that lack of academic skills. It's a lot of these other pieces along with some SEL problems that some of our students have that we are working with them on.
Brian, have we ever thought, you mentioned the world language, have we ever thought about offering American Sign Language online or something? Because there are some students that could definitely benefit from that.
We have had some discussion before, and it may be something we need to explore a little deeper. I know just talking to some neighboring districts, sometimes doing the online courses, though, especially at a middle level, isn't always the best versus that having someone in person. But I think it is something worth exploring a little further at times here, but we haven't brought that up.
Looking at high school course failures, we actually had an overall decline in course failures last year. The prior year was 527. We dropped to 448 this year. That's a reduction of approximately 15%. The greatest improvement occurred during the second and third quarters. The failures fell from 151 to 108, from 142 to 108 respectively. However, fourth quarter was an area where the progress was not sustained. And it's important to note that these course failures can be, it's the 78 students, quarter four, 141 failures, so it could be more than one failure per student. So the data may be represented more than once. At the high school level, over the course of the school year, we had 35 students who did not earn a course credit, which could be a half a semester course or a full semester course. So we had 4 students who failed a half a semester course during semester 1, 3 students who failed a half a semester course during semester 2, and there were 28 who failed full year courses. And some of those courses that they failed were elective courses. And for students who fail courses that are not elective courses, they will have to take them again or do them through credit recovery for taking another course to earn that credit.
So our next slide here is taking a look at just some of the highlights from this past year from our culture goal. In terms of behavioral systems, the schools really focused on more building-wide behavior expectations. Again, just kind of having that consistent language. Discipline flow charts, kind of determining what's more of a minor infraction where a teacher should kind of handle that on their own to try to see if they can correct the problem one-on-one versus it kind of moving along to an administrator, which would be more like a major infraction. And then just consistent responses. What are those responses, consistent language that people are using as they're addressing students, and along with administration too, with students too. Cell phone and distraction-free procedures this past year. Faculty and staff, I think, report that classrooms were a lot more focused. There weren't interruptions from dealing with cell phones out. Not to say that we didn't have interruptions in some other areas with it, but I think overall there really was a good feel in the classrooms this year, which I think is important to note. And I think a lot of students, at least I know from a middle school level, I think there seemed to be less kind of stress of just dealing with that phone on a daily basis. Melissa, do you want to talk about
Yes. Okay, so for belonging and recognition, at Alice this year, we continue to do responsive classroom and zones of regulation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with those, responsive classroom, the purpose of that is to create a safe, joyful, and engaging school and classroom environment by integrating academic learning with social emotional skill development. This is a time every day that teachers purposely make to engage their class in this kind of learning. This could be everything from cooperation, advocacy, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. Going hand in hand with this, we also had our PPS staff and Mr. Urban go into all the classrooms, and they taught 5 units of the zones of regulation. So that is an SEL, social emotional curriculum, that builds skills in emotional and self-regulation. It provides a simple common language across all the grades and a visual framework to help students learn coping strategies, foster resilience, and communicate how they're feeling. And even with our students in our different types of programs in the building, they also receive that, and we modify and adapt it for their needs. But that has really, we've really seen a lot of benefits, especially when we have to talk with students one-on-one about how they're feeling, what was the situation about. It's really been a strength this year to do that across the board in all of our classes.
With the student connection surveys and mentoring, so student connection surveys in middle school here, we always are trying to make sure that a student has an adult they feel comfortable to talk with here at school. It doesn't matter who it is, but who do they feel comfortable with. Our faculty and staff, we have them kind of go through and determine students they feel like they have a connection with. We then ask the same with the students. And then we kind of pair that up to see, are the faculty and staff the same as what the students are saying? And if we're seeing that it's a no, and especially if we have a student that doesn't have at least one person written down, we try to see if there was a faculty staff member that thought they maybe had a connection with that person and see if they can keep working on that relationship. We also have done some mentoring with some of our high school students. Casey is one who did a great job of that this year, helping us in the middle school. So again, it's something we try to tap into some of our high school students, and that, again, kind of student-to-student connection is sometimes a big thing versus even just some of the other adults in the building. So again, just trying to find someone that a student can kind of talk to and look up to a little bit more. But then also how can we get some of the students who may be more involved in school too, like more taking a look at those individual students. Are they involved in school, right? Do they have a purpose of wanting to be here each day? So that's always important.
And then our final bullet point up there is our Spartan Strong recognition. So this year, every month across the district, we had staff nominate students for one of our Spartan Strong values, which you can see on the poster behind me here. So every month, we had staff fill in, and they can nominate more than one student. Who would they nominate, why, what was their example for nominating, and then we would announce those at the end of the month. At the end of the year, we had out in the pavilion, our students who were nominated come out for, Tracy provided a really nice ice cream and sorbet dessert for our kids who got recognized. And that was just something that really brought everybody together. It was really nice to see the older kids socialize there with the younger kids and have that sense of community across the district.
In terms of tiered student supports, we in middle school definitely we track like a behavior log where teachers will keep track of students they've had conversations with to see if there's a pattern, to see if we need to whether parents have been reached out to about it to try to get them in on the conversation about a student's behavior. But they're reviewing this every couple of weeks, and then also just see if it needs to maybe go to another level other than just an intervention a teacher may be trying.
So yeah, our Aperture screener, which for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is a social emotional screener that aligns with the New York State social emotional learning benchmarks. And it looks at 6 specific areas, one being self-awareness, self-management skills, social awareness skills, relationship skills, decision-making skills, and optimistic thinking. So this screener kind of pulls together a lot of the things that we're already doing in the classroom with responsive classroom, with the zones of regulation, and gives us it gives us a snapshot as to, how we're engaging the student's social emotional learning. So we'll go into the next slides after we finish discussing these steps.
So what do we do with this information? So what happens at Ellis is obviously, they're too young to go through this and identify themselves. So we have the teachers go on in November after they've had a good amount of time getting to know our students, and they rate the students. It's all strength-based. So it's asked in a way of, you know, are you seeing this? Do you see these kinds of skills in the student? And then they do it again in the spring. Our PPS team shows the whole faculty the results. Grade level, each grade level looks at the results, and then also each teacher has the results there too. What we do is we take those results as well at our weekly PPS meeting after we get them for the first time. We look at how those align with our students who come out as high risk, so that means our students who are chronically absent, our students who are falling below grade level, might have a bunch of different interventions going, have referrals or have a history of referrals in the past. So we look at those hand in hand and we try to see, okay, what areas of concern are we seeing here, and do we have an intervention to support the student? So at each of those levels, the results of that look differently. At Ellis in the past, it has been, you know, providing opportunities or chances to have our older students pair with some of our younger ones. At middle school, we've had our twin counties, which I'll talk about in a second. We identified a group of students who could use additional support in decision making. So our twin counties prevention counselor worked with those groups of students. And then at the high school level, we did more individual goal setting and responsible decision making. Those came up as two of our lowest areas of need. So we really looked at who are those kids who identified themselves as high risk in these areas, and how can we better support them. But it's really a team approach of getting everyone at the table to determine what intervention will work best. And then of course the high school level is talking to the student about this and saying, hey, these are some of our ideas, what do you think? So that's worked really well, and it's really helpful information, and Brooke will show you in a minute how our students grow across the year. Prevention and wellness is our last area there. So one of our district goals this past year was pairing up with Twin Counties Prevention Counseling, and we had a few different counselors who came in this year. At the end, we had Taylor, who was with us from March all the way to the end of the year, and she worked with more than 20 of our students individually to do individual lessons. She also worked with two of our strong groups of students on decision making and social skills. She also pushed into the 7th and 8th grade health classes and gave the decision making curriculum to them once a week. We also had our 6th graders have some of the lessons, and we had some of our high school students get some of those lessons too. But what we found is in the high school, what worked really well was that one-on-one individual supports. And she also came to our PPS meetings once a month. So she would come in and talk to us about how, generally she couldn't go into individual conversations, but generally how were they doing? Was she seeing progress? How many of them were saying to her, this has made an impact for me? And we did have a lot of really good success stories. She also works with our students who are suspended for having that substance abuse found out in the person.
All right, so here's the data from the Aperture Screener for Ellis. And as Melissa made reference to, the teachers are the ones filling out this rating scale. So you can see, basically the trend is moving in a positive direction. I think a culmination of all of the, the supports through the zones of regulation, the PPS staff going into the classroom and really looking at this data and then tailoring the lessons to reinforce some of these skills has been very beneficial. Last year, the focus was on self-awareness because that was the overall weakness that we were seeing. And just to kind of give you the visual, so the red is needs for instruction, the blue is typical growth, and the green is the strength area. So, and those students that are in the red, once we look at the data and identify what, based on this screener, there's multiple measures here, but based on this specific one, if there's an area that is really sticking out, Those are the students that would be either receiving social skills groups, individual counseling, or a variety of other supports that would be provided through the PPS staff.
How long does it take a teacher to fill out an individual screener?
7 minutes. I mean, it depending upon, depending upon the teacher and how depth that they want to go into it, it may be a little bit longer, but the initial screening is 7 minutes. You're welcome. Do you want to move on to middle school and high school? And the trend here too, we see that the need for SEL support has been decreasing according to this screener, and know that the middle school, high school students are taking this assessment themselves. So all of the students in the class log on to the computer, they enter their answers in, and they get direct feedback at the middle and high school levels. So looking forward into this upcoming school year, the PPS team is meeting in actually August 26th, and they're going to take a look at the weaknesses that were identified in the screening on the post-test for 25-26. I did take a sneak peek, and look that social awareness this year was a little bit of a weakness. So they're going to continue building on what they've already taught last year in those individual lessons being pushed into the classroom or in counseling sessions, and then build in some of the social awareness skills into that. So I'll be meeting with them at the end of August 26th, which is in 2 weeks.
Could you explain when you say social awareness, or give us an example of that, because we're not as close?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, like, understanding social cues. I may be talking really loud, that might upset somebody, in its most simplistic form, but really picking up on those social cues that are around us. You're welcome.
This graph shows our chronic absenteeism rate, and chronic absenteeism is defined as 10% or more of days being absent. Those are excused and unexcused absences. So you can see that at Ellis in June, so this shows June across the board from 18-19 all the way to this past June. We are seeing really great levels in Ellis, where we're back to those pre-COVID levels of almost 13% there. Middle school, 12.2%, and the high school, 28.3%. One of the things that we look at every month actually more than that, every week we look at each grade level and look at how our chronically absent students doing. One thing that we have found is that January and February are really tough months. So this year, our character ed team planned some different things that could support students. In the high school, we did a challenge for all of our grades where we looked at the percentage of students present, and we posted that every day. And that was our first time doing it, and they really enjoyed it. At the end of the month, we saw which grade had the most presence during that month, and the PTA was gracious enough to sponsor an ice cream social for the kids. They had shamrock shakes, and that was really well received by the students. So we're trying to incorporate more of those kinds of things, but those are definitely difficult months, and we still saw that, but especially for our high school. Okay. And this shows our daily average attendance by building, September through June. So if you look across the board here, it's usually around 93%. That's our elementary, that first solid bar, 94%, middle school 94%, and high school 91%. And that's within our trend for the last couple of years.
Right, so still in the culture goal. You know, another data point that we pay attention to is discipline referrals. So as we interpret discipline referral data, it's important to remember that referrals aren't simply just a measure of student behavior. They can be influenced by a number of factors, including student behavior, but also teacher and administrator reporting practices, changes in building expectations and initiatives, rules, the implementation of systems such as PBIS or MTSS systems, and of course changes in leadership or discipline procedures. So we will go and break this down a little bit further by building and look at some different points, but before we do that, just looking here at the trends over the past several years, you can see that there's year-to-year shifts by building. And we notice that there's a difference in patterns by building. The high school consistently reports the greatest number of referrals, followed by the middle school, while the elementary school remains comparatively stable. At the middle school, referrals increased following the pandemic, peaked during the 24-25 school year, and this year we had a decline. At the high school, referrals have fluctuated considerably over time, but there's been a substantial increase this school year, and Mr. Reeve is going to speak to some of the reasoning behind the increase here in a few minutes. But first, we'll have Melissa talk about elementary school discipline.
All right, so here we have our tier 1. So this is the majority of our students. 401 have had no referrals at all. Our tier 2, these are our students who have between 1 and 4 referrals. So we have 55 referrals there. So keep in mind that that's 55% of our students. Tier 3, 5 or more referrals is 4 students. Typically, you know, we see that most of our students will have 1 referral. We see a lot of our referrals take place during those unstructured times of the day, so in bus, recess, cafeteria, and we've done a lot of work with our aides who supervise students during those times to reinforce positive strategies, to make sure that they're communicating with administrators and teachers regarding the different behaviors that they see so they can follow up. Our tier 3 students, these are ones who really develop those patterns of behavior where we have to put in place several different interventions to really help support them throughout their day.
Okay, diving into some of the middle school data here. So as I said earlier though, I mean, behind a lot of these disciplines, right, there's a story with it. And so, you know, we're always still trying to create the relations and try to be, with our PBS program, rewarding positive behaviors with students, or recognizing those positive behaviors, because that's an important thing. We want to recognize our students who are being good role models for their fellow students with the goal that hopefully students who might be misbehaving will follow that same pattern of behavior, positive behavior. But diving into some of these numbers, when you take a look at the tier 3 there, you know, again, we decreased this year from 294 to 294 from 580. But when you look at that first tier 3, there are 15 students that percentage makes up there in tier 3 who had 5 or more referrals, compared to we had 25 students in that tier 3 last year. So 6.1% of the 261 students generated 82% of the referrals, or 182 of the 294 referrals. You know, so doing some of the math there was only 112 referrals for 246 students, and most of them didn't have a referral. One of the 15 there had 63 referrals, or it was 35% of the 182 referrals, and that's a student we keep working with other interventions on, and we'll continue this year. With the rest of the pie pieces, so tier 2 had 63 students in it, so that was 25.5 students who had 1 to 4 referrals. Of those 63 students, 31 only had 1 referral. And a lot of that probably was our personal internet connected devices, all right? So, you know, In Tier 1, there was 68.4%, or 183 of the 261 students did not have a discipline referral. And if you just take those 31 I'd mentioned who only had one, we had 214 students who had 0 to 1 referrals last year. So again, it's always interesting to dive into this a little bit deeper because I think numbers can be deceiving sometimes if you don't break them down. But we continue to reflect on behaviors and how we can improve things in our building climate. We feel we did more of that this past year with some more building-wide classroom expectations that we created last summer with our BLT. And we worked on those classroom behaviors because most of the referrals, and they were the highest this year too, is disruptive behavior. That's usually disruptive behavior in the classroom, disrupting the learning environment. But if you look at that too, our students, majority of their day are in the classrooms, right? They have 3 minutes in between to get to that next class. So it's no surprise that that number is higher too in that sense. So those are the numbers there. Like I said, it's always interesting to kind of break it down a little bit more when you first look at that, just to kind of see. I mean, because overall, we have really great kids here. And even the kids that are getting some referrals, we need to keep working with them, right? Because there's a story behind each of them, all right? And they're all important to us. We'll move on to the high school here. So again, the high school staff, in fact, I know they work very hard, again, with those relationships and connections. It's very important to them. And they will handle a lot of their minor incidents themselves. I mean, if the teacher wants to be able to handle that incident with a student and hope that that relationship builds and the behavior is corrected. And this past year, the high school from last summer with their BLT work focused on a set list of building expectations. So there was consistency among everyone when addressing behavior this past school year. So in the high schools, Mr. Berkshire said, the number of referrals is up significantly this year with 872 referrals compared to 315 in June of 24-25. What is the cause of that spike? It could be from the goal established with consistent expectations, so maybe more people are addressing behaviors, right, and get to the point of writing referrals. But we also had the personal internet connected device regulation that went into effect this past year, and I'll talk a little bit more to that here at the high school. When you dive into the piece of the pie up there for the high school, in Tier 3, there were 43 students that had 5 or more referrals, or 13.7% of the 314 students, generated 71%, or 622 of the 872 referrals. 2 of the 43 students in that Tier 3 pie had 40 plus referrals, so they had a total of 93, or 11% of the 622 referrals. With the rest of the piece of the pie, if you look at the 100 in Tier 2, 46 of those 100 only had 1 referral, and from a quick look, most of them were personal internet connected devices. All right, so you're not having those referrals, right? Probably, but we learned from it. 54.5%, or 171 of the 314 students did not have a disciplinary referral. So again, though, if you're looking at students from either having no referrals or 1 referral, there's 217 students of the 314 who were at that.
Brian,
highest.
Brian, a question for you. So you mentioned that personal devices, connected devices, we've got some heavy hitters in there. Just the way that with nicotine or different substances being addictive, were any of those students possibly then referred to for possible counseling exactly for addictive behavior?
Oh, with the phones there?
With phones.
I believe there were a few issues early on that they had to deal with some parents calling and saying, the child can't be without it, and yeah, so I mean, we dealt with some of that early on, I think. At high school they did. And I had a couple of cases last summer, but we were able to resolve it and talk about how there's a phone to use in the office every time they want to call home, or if there's a real emergency, we'll pull a kid out of class and talk to you if there's that need. So, going back to the phones here, so that was the highest violation at the high school with 215 referrals. And second was skipping class, which is something the high school has been kind of really trying to work on the past few years. There was actually a spike in that this past year again. So kind of reversing the improvement they'd seen over the previous 2 years. Both of these will be an important focus at the high school as they look to strengthen their tier behavioral and attendance supports. And I know the high school does continue to reflect on behaviors and how they can improve things for their building climate. Still me. All right, slide 36, here we go. So in terms of community highlights for goal 3 of communication, ongoing communication is the norm. And right now, our norm is Facebook and Instagram. Increased communication on these 2 social media platforms. Our followers on Facebook has gone, another 3,636 this year, so we've gone from 7,298 to 10,934 followers on Facebook. On Instagram, we gained another 217 this year, so we went from 908 to 1,125. Again, so that helps us build an additional trusted source online for school information. We continue the district calendar that we mail a paper copy out every year and put it digitally on the website. It has a lot of very important dates throughout the year for families. There's also a couple pages inside that Sarah's put in there that really provides a lot of useful building information for families for a quick reference. The Spartan Snapshot was kind of upgraded this past year and goes out every Thursday night. Again, we're always trying to encourage all of our faculty staff to get, have Sarah come in, and she will pop in anywhere. You tell her when, and she'll be there, and to highlight a lot of the great things that are going on a daily basis here, K-12 on the campus. School safety, again, we still keep trying to encourage, and we do a great job of communicating out to families what is happening from a school safety standpoint, especially before the updates. And this past year, we continued to work with families about the best way of communicating. We put out some surveys, and we had some input from families who attended the PTA meetings. And with this feedback, we've had some actual takeaways that we've prioritized. We shared with the board and faculty this past spring. And for this upcoming year, we're improving some areas with synergy and promoting new updates to parent view. So fingers crossed on that. And then our perception survey, kind of district-wide theme. So as you know, we do our continuous school improvement workshops every summer. Again, looking at all sorts of data as we've talked to you about tonight. Our perception survey continues to be a piece that we always take a really strong look at. It's always interesting to hear the conversations around from all our BLT members when we start diving into some of that information. This year was our 11th year using it, so we've gathered a nice baseline of data over the years from our students, faculty, and parents. Students, faculty, and parents rate a series of statements. Some of you recall, if you're new to it, on a scale of 1, where they strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. And building level teams, we analyze it each year to help shape our goals and to start building initiatives. Typically, our challenges where we find, I don't know if I've ever seen a 1 on it, but typically the ones we focus on are ones where there's maybe a high 2 or a low 3 to try to improve those to get them into that 4 area. That we looked at them this slide. We're using some of those areas to again measure some of our quantitative growth for next year within our building goals. So those are some things you'll see at the end of the month where we've taken some things from the perception survey. Just looking at some of the highlights up there. If you recall also, the perception survey has open-ended responses with 2 questions. What are the strengths of the school, and then what can be improved? And the chart on the slide up there shows some of the strengths and challenges that stood out from people creating themes of saying the same thing for the open-ended responses. So K-12 communication continues to be a strength and a challenge. And we talked about, I think we're trying to update some things with the new app for Parent View this year. That has always been a kind of a battle the past couple of years we've been hearing from families. Parents and students feel challenges are respect and treatment from student to student and peer behavior. Vaping in the restrooms is a challenge. Strengths, students say strong relationships with teachers, adults, positive school climate, teachers' belief in student potential, and enjoyment of hands-on learning. And then our faculty feel our strengths are caring staff and relationships they create with students. With challenges, it's the inconsistent behavior, expectations, and consequences. Participation-wise, our numbers have stayed high for our students, faculty, and staff, but we continue to see parent and guardian numbers kind of go down. We want to get those up. We saw a decrease this past school year from a K-12, well, we went from 328 to 254. Breakdown by the buildings was Ellis went from 172 to 136, middle school 78 to 61, and high school 78 to 57. So But again, we've talked about that time and time again and try to get that out there, so we just gotta kind of keep working on that one to hear from more families. But again, the data has been very useful. One, to just kind of hear some of the great things kids and families and faculty think about it, and then taking some of those other areas of challenge and saying, you know, where's the truth somewhere, and what can we do? So.
How we all doing? We're ready to move into the 26-27 school year now. So excited to be shifting our eyes toward the 26-27 school year. And there's one thing that I want to mention, and I think we're all very aware of it. We are a district undergoing significant leader transition here, not only with a new superintendent, but also with a new elementary school principal and a new high school principal. And I think in a lot of ways people think, oh, the transition is going to start in September when the school year begins. I want to be very, very open here and say the transition started here at the end of March. Right? We've been a district in transition now, coming up on 5, but by the time the school year starts, it'll be 6 months, right? And the reason I say that is because when we got together for the school improvement conference in July, our message was one of continuity, purposeful continuity. So when we look at the district goals from 26-27, you're going to see a lot of similarities in there. You're going to see kind of themes. It's like, oh, wasn't that what they were working on last year? It's like, yes, in the large scheme of things, we're seeing some commonalities there and some consistency. So the large strategies may feel like they look like they're the same, but the actions, the things that we're going to do underneath them, those things will be things that are going to be different. And they're going to be very intentional about what were we working on last school year or years prior that need continued focus in tracking to make sure that we can move towards sustainability with these things in areas where we've made progress in that don't get lost in the shuffle. So all of the data that what we went through tonight, and then in the 160 pages of information that I've also given you, was reviewed to help shape these priorities for the 26-27 school year. So under our district goals coming up, the strategies that we have chosen will strengthen K-12 coherence, sustain the elementary literacy work, advance curriculum alignment at the secondary level, help support implementing the district's AI framework, and then from a culture perspective, our work will focus on continuing to make behavioral expectations clear for faculty and staff and students and families, bring together consistent adult practices related to those expectations, and continue to work on those tiered supports that Melissa and Brian were talking about. And finally, in our community goal, we're going to continue to work to strengthen school-family communication. One thing that's particularly important to note, large part of this, is that Parent View has just released an updated version of the Parent View app. So rolling that out is going to be really important in making sure people understand the differences in that, not just from the parent side, but also from the educator side, so that our teachers understand the gradebook practices that they have and how those gradebook practices translate into what parents see on the Parent View side. And so I think what you're going to see over the next several slides here, after we move away from the district slides, you're going to see an alignment with those 3 things that I just spoke about. Because as you all know, the district goals really are meant to support the building goals. The things that we do at the district leadership level are things that are supporting what the buildings have selected as their strategies for how they're going to improve. So at the elementary school level, we are focusing on the second year of the rollout of the ELA bookworms curriculum. But it's also about sustaining really great reading. As I mentioned earlier, we've been working with that for a while now. We're moving into our 6th year since we first picked it up as a tool for special class reading. So we need to make sure that we are sustaining that, and we're very deliberate about doing that. So it's about moving into 2nd year bookworms, but also sustaining our GR and that DI block that I talked about earlier, the differentiated instruction block. It's an important part. In addition, we're going to continue on with that work with executive functioning. Self-regulation has been identified as a great need for both students, for our students, and our teachers have noticed that our students need that. And we'll do that through consistent modeling of daily routines through the PBIS program, and also guided practice. We'll continue on with PPS zones push-in model. That was a great step forward last year, something that Ellis has been working on for quite some time. And then with family communication, again, to focus on academic communication, particularly in between report cards. The teachers down at Ellis have been focusing on doing bi-weekly communication. And we've also, as we've been transitioning into a new elementary school principal, we had Mrs. Harvey meet with Sierra Pizzola already to say, hey, what's your communication plan going to be? This is how Mr. Mahan did it. This is how Mr. Urban did it. We want to sustain these things. What's going to be your style, right? We want to keep those things going.
At the middle school with the curriculum, we're going to continue to build off our goal from 25-26 with our collaborative faculty meetings, having very established agendas for vertical and horizontal curriculum, again, to really have the curriculum scope and sequence ensuring data-driven instruction, really taking a look at data walls, every few weeks to see where students are, keep those updated throughout the year as we have either our team meetings or as we meet as an RTI team on a weekly basis, to again, just to be tracking our students, see the tools we have, whether it's using iReady, looking at last year's ELA in math and science and social studies, and the year after, is how they started this school year out, and continuing to just use all the pieces of data in one place, and really trying to get, we've really talked this summer about really trying to reinforce that more with teachers pulling up these walls as they're looking at their students. And they have been too. They take a lot of the iReady data we talked about earlier, and they dive into it individually by each student to see what the students' needs are. So just kind of continuing the work that they've been working on. Increase resilience. So again, with some of our study, organizational growth mindset, and other related skills, our PBS department is going to be creating some lessons to go into classrooms with, about 15 minutes to not take up too much instructional time, but they will be kind of presenting those materials before they go into the classrooms so that all teachers are aware of it, and kind of a folder of those tools and strategies they can kind of keep reinforcing. So it's not just a, hey, come in once, for a couple different lessons, and not have those skills reinforced that we're trying to get across with students on this. So being a little bit more purposeful with our teaching of it, and then how do we keep sustaining it going forward. And then the last one there is just the community. In terms of improving communication between school and home, as I said earlier, really supporting the push out of our new Parent View app, but also discussing with faculty. We've had these discussions before as a BLT and a faculty about just timeliness with grades being entered into the Synergy Gradebook.
You'll see some alignment here between what's going on at the middle school and the high school. The curriculum work is going to center on improving alignment across courses and grade levels, while also focusing on expanding high leverage engagement practices, things like implementing new styles of instructional technology, some artificial intelligence, along with the building thinking classrooms model. Under culture, the school will work to establish and reinforce those behavioral expectations that they worked on last year with students, staff, and caregivers. And the community strategy, again, is focusing on the consistent and effective communication, both within the school and with families. So the specific actions that are going to connect to these under curriculum alignment, teachers are going to be identifying and unpacking priority standards during their collaborative meeting time, through conference day sessions and department time. And this was one of the great conversations I heard during our school improvement workshop. I went over to listen to the high school group talking, and one of the teachers was talking about how his department uses student writing. They look at student writing together. Another teacher talked about how across all the different subject areas in their department, they look at the same standards that are kind of interconnected, and how that's playing in an arc all across the high school. And yet another department, a teacher showed, hey, this is what me and my team teacher that teaches the same class as me, every time after we give a test, we have this spreadsheet. We look at these standards and how they do it. What do we need to adjust? What do we need to reteach and spiral? And I heard those conversations and I was like, yeah, they get, that's the stuff. And these were the teacher leaders saying, these are the things that we want to get everybody to do, right? So very powerful when it comes from our teacher leaders. And again, you've heard me speak up here multiple times over the years how proud I am of the work that the teachers in the school district do. And that's just a great example that I wanted to share tonight of a conversation that I heard, and how these conversations at School Improvement Conference lead to these strategies. For culture, the high school will be revising and communicating school-wide expectations, reteaching them after extended breaks, reinforcing the Spartan Strong traits on a regular basis, and having a system of progress monitoring putting in place where we're reviewing behavioral data quarterly, and providing some ongoing training related to how to work with students who need more support. And lastly, around community, again, as we're familiar with, this generally focuses on communication. It's going to include system of principal mailings and communication throughout the school year. How are we getting out syllabus and grading information for families, connection to the whole parent view rollout and that piece there. Positive communication home from teachers through Spartan Strong cards being mailed home. And again, just monitoring progress throughout the school year through student achievement, through referral data, and just student engagement and communication data that we pay attention to as well. All right. So I want to thank you so much for your attention tonight and your questions. For those of you who asked for follow-up information, we'll work on making sure we get that to you as soon as we are able to. And just always, again, on behalf of this whole team, we're so proud to work here, proud to work together with all of you, because we know that all the adults in this district are here for the students. And whether I have that conversation with a teacher, a TA, an aide, a food service worker, transportation worker, board member, an administrator, I'm not forgetting anybody, building and grounds employee, right? We're all here for the students, and we do look at the information that we get from the students, whether it be academic information, behavioral information, social emotional information, how are we engaging with our community, and we pay attention to it, and we act and we plan on it, because we know that this is a good practice. We know these are the types of things that we need to do to help Greenville reach its mission, and to reach the types of things that we've set out to do. Thank you.
Any other questions for them? Thank you all. It's summer. We appreciate the late night, and we appreciate all this information. It's a lot. On to action items. We're going to combine 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 13th, 2026 reorganizational meeting, the July 13th, 2026 business meeting, and the August 6th, 2026 special business meeting?
Eric and Karen.
Any discussion? All in favor? Could I have a motion to approve the finance reports for the month ending June 30th, 2026 and July 31st, 2026?
Patrick, Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Tracy and Patrick,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendations.
Mariah and Karen,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the district safety plan for 2026, 2027.
Patrick and Karen,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to establish the tax warrant for 2026, 2027.
Tracy and Eric,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve, to accept the fire reports.
Patrick and Mariah,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to accept the 2026, 2027 bus routes.
Patrick and Karen,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to award contract transportation bids, approve contract transportation rollover contracts, and parent transportation agreements for the 2026, 2027 school year.
Karen and Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the resolution allowing the Greenville Central School District to piggyback off an originating contract between Coxsackie-Athens Central School District and Coxsackie Transport Inc. to transport a Greenville student to Paul Puccio School at Maple Hill for the 26-27 school year.
Tracy and Patrick,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve preschool memorandum of agreement between the Greenville Central School District and United Methodist Church Daycare Center for 2026, 2027.
Patrick and Eric,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve Questar 3 initial service contract with the Greenville Central School District for the 2026, 2027 school year.
Karen, Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the adult breakfast and lunch rates as of September 1st, 2026 per the NYS Child Nutrition Management System.
Patrick and Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the contracts between the Greenville Central School District and Management Advisory Group Business Operations, Inc. for accounting services and payroll processing for the period of September 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027.
Patrick and Karen,
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and Crossroads Center for Children for school year 26-27.
Patrick and Mariah,
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve the contract between the Greenville Central School District and the Anderson Center for Autism beginning July 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2027.
Patrick and Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to approve overnight field trip to the FFA National Convention in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Eric and Tracy.
Any discussion? All in favor? A motion to approve surplus items.
Karen and Tracy,
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. And at this point, does anyone have any items that they'd like to put up for discussion at a future meeting? Oh, good, then I'll go. I have two things that I'd like to get updates on at some point in the near future, whether it's September or October. One of them is, I know we sort of covered it a little bit in that presentation, but the cell phone data that goes to the state at the end of the year, just so that the board is aware of what has been reported to the state and that it has been successfully submitted. And the other would be a brief update on the implementation and how it's going with the new building use request form. That was started in the spring, and just an idea of where that is and how it's going so far. Any other items? Okay. Reminders, we have September 14th, our tour of facilities will begin at the Ellis Elementary Cafeteria at 6 p.m. On September 21st, we have our September business meeting and a report on the opening of school here in the library at 6 p.m. And on October 19th, 2026, we have a business meeting here in the library at 6 p.m. With that, I'll move us to closing open forum. Please note the same guidelines apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Okay, great.
I just wanted to say thank you.
I'm sorry, could you just state your name for the
I'm sorry, I'm Margaret Kelly, and I'm a community member. I just wanted to say, thank you for the report on the data for the schools. It was very informative, and I'm glad to hear that people are using data in their decision making. I do think it's very important to look at the cohort, especially given the size, our class sizes. So, you got less than 100 kids in a grade that can really impact what happens year to year in a grade. And you can't look at one group of third graders and measure them against another group of third graders. That is not a meaningful measure, really. So, I look forward to seeing the cohort data, and I appreciate the work that you and the administration do. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And I do know that at the summer workshops and the administration team, there is a lot of work around the cohorts. I may have misled with my question on that one particular slide, but we definitely keep that in mind. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. And can I have a motion made to adjourn us to executive session to discuss personnel matters concerning the employment of a particular person or persons?
Karen and Eric.
All in favor? Oh, sorry, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.